Are we ready?
Mr. Paletti, we are now live.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for today's question and answer period regarding school reopening. I'm Paul Paletti, the school superintendent, and joining us today are representatives from the Human Resources Department, Exceptional Student Education, the Building and Maintenance, Transportation, and other district officials, particularly Dr. Egley from the sub-office in Clewiston and representatives from the Federal Program Center. We understand the concerns that many parents and students have in returning to school. We began developing plans approximately 2 weeks ago to return, and then those plans were somewhat altered this past Monday with an executive order from the Commissioner of Education that says that schools will reopen in August. Among those choices was a mandate that schools have a 5-day regular brick and mortar option open for parents and students. That means traditional school. We also have a second option, which is a distance learning option where students can maintain their tie to their school and get the lessons daily from teachers. That option, if you would stop and think, not only for parents who are concerned about the overall health and welfare and safety of their student, but for those students who may have a chronic condition where it would be best they not be in the general population. The third option offered by us would be virtual school through Hendry County's agreement with the K-12 virtual school company. If I can talk just a minute about each one, and then I'll be talking about certain things, and I have incorporated in this talk answers to the questions that have been submitted, and I will take a break and have someone else do some discussion while I review the questions, make sure that we're covering as many as possible. In the traditional classroom, let's start at the elementary level. Teachers will be teaching students in a class that is called a cohort. That means that class stays together virtually, essentially all day long. If they cannot accommodate feeding in the cafeteria by maintaining social distance, then that feeding takes place in the room. When we talk about enhanced safety precautions and health precautions, that means not only are classrooms cleaned daily, they are sanitized daily. And common touch areas are sanitized throughout the day. The enhancement teachers will come to that class. In other words, the music and art teachers will come to that classroom rather than the students moving to those enhancement enrichment areas. Here's why this is helpful. Suppose there is someone who is now every student who arrives on campus, regardless of grade level, will have their temperature taken. The magic number is a 100.4 or below. That student would then be allowed to go to the classroom. If that student has a temperature or a fever running more than 100.4, they would then be sent to a holding area, which is separate from the regular clinic in the school, for further evaluation. Parents will be called and that student will go home. That student needs to be fever-free for a 72-hour period without the taking of any kind of fever reduction medication, Tylenol, Motrin, or something of that nature. If they're clear after that time, they come back to school. Now, suppose a student gets sick during the day. That student goes to the clinic The temperature is taken and the same procedure holds true. If that student proves symptomatic of COVID, we do not then have to shut down the school, but we have to take precautions to that particular classroom. For instance, if we have a student who is a COVID patient in the elementary level, that class will go home where distance learning will take place. As long as it's not the teacher who is sick, the teacher will then maintain instruction. They too have the incubation and quarantine period of a set number of hours, in which case they will return. All right? Now, suppose, particularly those of you out there who are teachers who are worried about this, and worried about getting it, because in likelihood it might be a teacher who gets COVID. The teacher who presents, and all staff and faculty have to have their temperatures taken before they enter the school building also. Their temperatures get taken and they have the same protocol and procedure. We recommend that when the student or the employee, faculty member, or para has to go home, they begin clinical treatment right away. That means they go ahead and get a COVID test. If the teacher is waiting for the COVID test, and if they are asymptomatic after 72 hours but have not received the results of that test, they are to remain out. Their sick leave will not be docked for that. We are asking the person not to report to work, therefore we are not charging the sick leave. If, and I'm talking about employees, if the employee has COVID, then the CARES Act provides 10 days for recovery. Those 10 days may be enough, but again, those 10 days would not be charged against the employee's sick leave. In certain cases, 10 days is not enough for recovery. If the employee can trace back the exposure to the class or to the school, then that becomes an illness in the line of duty question. If that's the case, they will not be charged sick leave for their recovery time. If their exposure has not been at the school, then after those days, and I believe I've counted 13 or 14 days, anything past that will be charged to their sick leave. All right, so that's how that goes. That's how that health safety concern is put in place. In the secondary schools, we have a bit of a different issue. The secondary schools have more movement, so that we are trying to limit that movement at this point. LaBelle High School, for example, is going to transition to a block schedule, which means that their students will only change classes 4 times during the day. And that remains, that's how they will do this. Middle school, we're still working on that. We don't have all of the answers to all of your questions because frankly, we don't know all of the questions that we're going to be looking for. We have lived in a different world since March 13th. And this world is even proving more different and difficult to navigate. Students, all students, will wear masks until they're in the classroom. We have provided cloth masks for each student in Hendry County schools. Students on the bus who are transported by bus will wear a mask while they're in transit. We would encourage that on the bus, family groups sit together, and that will be up to the bus driver. If a student presents sick, Now, we will not be taking temperatures at the bus stop because we do not want to run the risk of leaving a child on the street. That student will then report immediately to the holding area for future evaluation. Students must wear a mask on campus, between classes, and any kind of transition from one area to another. The mask is optional in the classroom. Each bus, instead of, you might be familiar with the standard sweeping of a bus. That's not going to happen this time. It will be swept, but after each run, each bus will be sanitized. We have new chemicals, we have new equipment, we have new procedures to follow to handle the sanitation. Large congregation areas in the secondary level, by secondary I mean middle and high schools, we will do our utmost to eliminate them. For instance, there probably should not be a locker assignment this year. Lockers tend to have areas where students congregate in very close proximity to get their books for the next class. There will be some question on water. We will attempt to provide water, bottled water, as we can to the schools, but we will encourage students to bring their own water. That doesn't mean we will punish any child who doesn't, but water fountains also are a area that has the potential to have mass congregation. The other option is distance learning online. Now, I know that I have not answered satisfactorily all of the traditional blended safety issues because, frankly, some of this depends on how many people pick whatever option, particularly in this next one, the distance learning option. Again, that might be for the student who has a chronic condition. We don't know how many teachers are needed for that. It is not our intent for a teacher to teach live classes and distance learning simultaneously. We believe that as we have students who have chronic conditions, we may have teachers who have chronic conditions. Those teachers will be the ones who will deal with the distance learning online. The distance learning online, what we have learned since our experience since March, or from March, is that student will have a traditional bell schedule and a traditional teacher. That teacher will be required to interact with the students daily. The state is saying if you do this, they have to interact daily. They would be, for instance, a third grade teacher would be teaching from 8 to 2:30 the third grade curriculum, all right? It would not be where the teacher comes in and records a lesson and that's played throughout the day. That tended to be what happened with our past experience, but this would be a student with a teacher assigned that from that school. Secondary, middle school, and high school students will have either 4 based on LaBelle High School, 6 based on Clewiston High School, or 7 based on Clewiston High School, or 7 based on Clewiston Middle School, and 7 at LaBelle Middle School, different teachers if they choose this option. So that a teacher, for instance, who is teaching Algebra 1 might have 6 classes of Algebra 1 all day in a regular classroom. Well, that teacher has to teach that subject 6 times. That's what's going to have to happen under the virtual school option. Progress monitoring is required by the state for all of our options, for our first 2 options. We will be checking to make sure, particularly with this interaction and through the various resources we currently have, such as iReady, to see that the students are getting it, to see that their progress is acceptable. If it's not, then a decision has to be made between the teacher and the parents, and that decision for distance learning will be taking place every 4.5 weeks at the interim report level. Should that student continue on, or should that student consider a traditional model? That will be the reason being for that is if progress monitoring is showing a potential failure, we do not want to wait until that student has earned the F before we make the change. We want to be proactive to see if we can do other things to get that student up to speed. K-12 virtual school is offered kindergarten through 11th grade. And that is a virtual school, which is the Florida Virtual is a company that operates nationwide. Students will be in their classes, changing classes with their teachers, and that would require a semester or a year-long commitment. No one is married to each of any of these forever. This executive order from the state deals with the first semester only. Our plan deals with the first semester only. And we need to be aware that at any given time, our plan can change. If there is a severe outbreak, we may have to shut down a school. If there's an even more severe outbreak, we may have to shut down our schools in Hendry County. We just need to be, if one thing we have learned since March is how to be flexible. So at this point, I'm going to put Dr. Staley on the spot and ask her to talk about some of the ESE issues that she will be dealing with while I go through some of these questions. Please.
Thanks for that being on the spot. Okay,
so I don't do that. Mr. McCarthy, be prepared. Okay. All right. And Mr. Seeley, be prepared.
No worries. A little bit about ESE and the thought behind how we're going to do things as well. Because of the uncertainty of what should or should not happen, especially with some of our ESE students, we will be, for everything we have, trying to meet with each student, with each parent. We will try to have IEP meetings. It is going to take us a little while, so please don't think that we are forgetting about you, but it's going to take a little while to have all of these meetings. But we will be discussing what we're calling the COVID slide. We will be discussing the different placements that you all have chosen, and we will be discussing what the team kind of thinks for what is going to happen, and then we will make determinations based on that. If you have chosen something and your IEP, meeting happens and the IEP team decides something different, we can change, we will move you. We will change, we will do whatever we need to do based on the individual needs of your student. The biggest thing to remember is that you make the right choices for you and for your students, and we will try to back that up with everything we have. As far as services go, we will still have services provided. How that looks may look a little different. Some students did very well doing a virtual speech language therapy or even a packet OT, or we bring the student into a private separate room and we do some therapy there. We haven't quite figured all of that out yet, only because, like Mr. Picoletti said, we're sort of waiting to see how many in each section we're going to have, so we can do what we need to do for you. Please know that we are bound and determined that we're going to make something work. This is just all new for all of us, and we are all in the same boat. And we will be having those meetings. We will be having those phone calls. I know that Some of you got tired of hearing from us in the last few months of the school, but it will happen because we're set on your children. So we'll try to figure out something together. The IEP team, will make decisions with you involved, of course, and that's how we will look at going through all of our ESD students and having some meetings and having some discussion and some determinations based on their needs. We do have some higher need students that may not choose to come back because of their medical issues, and that is quite all right. We will figure out how to maintain for you guys as well. Are you ready, Mr. Paletti, or you want me to?
I'm ready. I'll go ahead and handle some questions that put Mr. McCarthy on the spot next. But if I can go through these questions, and we have a lot of concern about CDC guidelines. You have to realize that schools are not built to meet CDC guidelines. We will do our best where practical to maintain and follow those guidelines. But what we are being advised to do by the state is, if it is practical and you are able to do it. So let me go down this list of questions that I have right here. How will parent pickup be handled? Will each class be required to stand 6 feet apart? Parent pickup will be handled the same way that it's handled now, with the exception of the student's temperature being taken when they exit the car. There will be distancing held outside by the time they get to the classroom. We cannot guarantee until we see how many students are showing up, how many students will be in that class. But excessive furniture or extra furniture will be moved out of the classroom so that we have more room to handle. We also have safety features. Like I said, the students will be given a cloth mask. Teachers and staff will have face shields, and we are providing those to them. I can't explain. The next question would be, how many students will there be in one classroom? I don't know. We will follow class size standards because we have to legally do that. And some we can be able to spread out, some will be spread out, but not meeting necessarily the CDC recommendations. Cafeteria. The cafeteria, unless the school can maintain social distancing, eating will be done in the classrooms, and feeding will be in a grab-and-go type basis for both breakfast and lunch. The libraries will be open, but then books will have to be sanitized. There will be like one area where students will return a book. They would be wiped down before they're put back on the shelf. Same with the playground, even though we say it's outside. If the students are multiple classes are using a playground equipment, that playground equipment needs to be sanitized. Students this is another question, will be taken to the restroom and they will wash their hands. Cafeteria workers will be wearing masks. There will be sanitizer throughout the building. We have signs and educational signs put up about keeping your distance, washing your hands, using sanitizers and such as that. There will be open houses, but open houses are going to look a lot different. Some of them are going to be virtual. The principals of the schools are working on those plans now. There will be a virtual element to the open house, and then small groups coming in by appointment, perhaps, to the school for the open house. But remember, we still are under constraints of no group larger than 50 at one time. I talked about the staff member or student being tested positive for COVID. They have to have clearance. Anybody who's sent home, we are recommending they start getting clinical care immediately. A COVID test is available at the health department and other testing centers. We also have a question about, will there be extracurricular activities? We don't know. That's the bit we're waiting on direction from the state. We don't know when the football season is going to start. We don't know when volleyball season is going to start. We know that conditioning can start, but we do not know, folks, we don't even know if we're going to be allowed to sell tickets to the games and how we're going to be able to put social distancing in effect in the stands. Teachers who teach music, art, will be going to the individual classrooms, with the exception of PE, where we can maintain social distancing outside. Okay, Mr. McCarthy, I'm going to ask you, we do have some concerns from bus drivers on what we're doing to ensure their safety. So if you can talk about what you're doing both in transportation and in school maintenance and facility cleanliness.
Certainly. So several things on the bus. Let's start off first on the bus drivers. The bus drivers will be provided face shields and face masks. We had, as a transportation association, tried to look at putting an enclosure for the driver to protect the driver that was denied by DOE that it didn't meet federal standards, and so that has been actually even a bus manufacturer to come up with a sample one that's been denied. So there will not be a structure around the bus driver. The students have to use hand sanitizer, which are mounted on the bus when they get on the bus, and they will be provided cloth masks. Drivers will have those available, cloth mask and paper mask, if the students forget theirs after the first few days. And so from that standpoint, we have the eye protection, mouth protection on the face shields and the face masks. The buses are sanitized twice a day, after the morning runs and then after the evening runs. So they're completely sanitized front to back, and those will be done by the mechanics, they don't have to be done by the drivers. Those are being done by the mechanics. Social distancing is impossible. The states recognize that when they told us to open at full capacity. So depending on how many students attend on a basis, will determine how many students we have on the buses. We have modified some of our routes so that we are transporting primarily elementary school children, primarily middle school children, primarily high school children, so we have less intermixing than we have had in the past. We have a shortage of bus drivers, as does virtually every district in the country, and that's our true limiting factor on what we can do on buses. But buses will be carrying capacity, as they always do. It seems impossible, you'd only put 13 students on the bus. But we are doing what we can in the sanitizing and taking care of the bus drivers and students on the bus. As far as the schools go, they will be sanitized, all of the classrooms, all the high-touch areas, cafeterias. Those areas will be sanitized on a daily basis at the end of every school day. And so there is hand sanitizer in every classroom that the teachers will have. The students will be expected to sanitize their hands. And again, teachers are provided all the personal protective equipment that they need or have asked for. Talk about COVID, the isolation rooms are going to be negative pressure. We have to modify those a little bit. It's a new thing that came on in the last couple of weeks. But those will be negative pressure so that we're not just recirculating any potential positives throughout the school. So those modifications are taking place and will be in place before the start of school. I think that's it for me, unless you have something else.
No, that's good. That's good. There may be something else as when we close out, we'll have an additional set of questions that Mr. Adams is monitoring for us. I'll go ahead and Mr. Seeley, you're going to be next when I'm finished with this group of questions. If we choose option 2, how soon can we return to school? That decision can be made every 4.5 weeks. It can't be that you choose one and on Monday and by Friday want to change. You need to stick it through at least every 4.5 weeks. And you can switch from traditional to distance to virtual. Okay, you are not married to anyone, but you do have to give us a 4.5 week window in which to make sure that we're doing the right thing for your student. Okay, for middle and high school especially, This question, are the intentions to potentially have virtual students and regular students at the same exact time, or will we have period one and the next period virtual? It is not our intention to have a blended traditional classroom with a virtual experience. We don't know what the virtual experience would look like until we know how many numbers there are for us to schedule. So that at the middle and high school level, if you're teaching 7th grade civics, you may have, let's just do the numbers. Now, we've asked people starting yesterday to make their choice, and so far we have 1,130 parents who've made their choices. The deadline is next Wednesday, by the way. But so right now, it's trending about 60% people returning to the regular class, 25% for virtual, or for the distance learning, then 15% for virtual. If those numbers hold true and you have a 200-member civics class in 7th grade and close to middle school, you will have up to 40% of those 200 students not on campus, okay? So you will have 120 of those students, if these figures hold true, who are taking 7th grade civics. If you had, 18, 22, let's see, you would have to have 10. I'm rounding off, 10 teachers teaching that subject. So that way, that means 4 no longer have to be on campus teaching that subject in the classroom. They may be on campus, but they may be teaching that subject 50% or 30 of them would be in a virtual school, 50 of them would be on the remote learning basis, still close to middle school students, but learning at home. So you would have at least a teacher for half a day teaching those students virtually, but interacting with those students. But I'm just using that as an example. I don't know until we get the numbers here to look at. Also, we have a question. We are putting on our website K-12 school, but we have a parent who's asking what's the difference between K-12 and Florida virtual. The reason we are putting K-12 is that we have an agreement with K-12, and we also have a person in the district who represents K-12. You don't with Florida virtual, but either one would be something you could look at. Okay. Again, student-teacher ratio, I don't know what that's going to be, other than we will do our best to follow class size, and we will know that better when we get through that. When or how long are children wear masks? We're providing a mask. We are looking at providing a mask that is in transit time to be worn. It is optional to be worn in the classroom. We are pricing the shields that can be in place for student desks, okay? Will children continue virtual learning if someone was to be infected or be sick? Yes. Let's go back to that one situation where the student is out and has COVID. That means the whole class, not necessarily the whole school, but that whole class is home. Instruction would then be virtual by that teacher during that time until everybody can come back, okay? Who's next? Mr. Seeley, could you talk while I go through some of these other questions?
Sure. From an HR standpoint, and a lot of this has been covered, the district is doing everything that we can to make these schools safe for return, for a traditional return for our students and of course for our faculty and staff. Remember that if a faculty or staff member comes with symptoms or has symptoms or is COVID, remember you are protected under the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act for 10 days, and that protects your pay and your sick leave. Now, I know that there will be faculty and staff members that are just concerned about coming back. And if you are concerned about coming back, and it's not COVID related, I would ask that you would speak with me, call me, make an appointment with me, let's talk. And I'd be happy to go over everything again, what we're doing, and try to calm some of those concerns that you have. And this may come up later. It was in one of the questions. I'll go ahead and address it now. The meals that will be served, there will be cold and hot meals, but all of those meals will be hinged, wrapped, and they'll be ready for a grab and go. So that came from Sedexa. Okay?
Okay, thanks. Here's a question which hits to the difficulties we have, and you have to understand, parents and teachers, we struggle with this. This has not been easy for us to say, this is what we are going to do, just go forth and obey. Are there going to be extra safety measures put into place for the younger students in VPK, kindergarten, and first grade? Students in this age range struggle with distancing and keeping their hands away from their face. Oh, that only begins to touch the tip of the iceberg that we're fighting with to decide what to do with that age group. Because those babies it's not like talking to a junior in high school saying, stay away. You have to be constantly monitoring. So that is one of the big things that will be happening. And again, I want to stress that CDC guidelines are guidelines. We have a comment. What do we see as our district's biggest challenge heading into the year? And our biggest challenge is getting started and keeping everyone safe and making sure that learning takes place in a healthy, safe, and orderly learning environment. And that is always a challenge. It's going to be particularly challenging as we move forward. What can the community do to help in meeting these challenges? I think support. Basically, that's it. Because here's the problem. We're going to limit visitors to campus. And that's tough. That's horrible. But those people who we tend to agree should come in and volunteer. Until we get a handle on things, there will be no extra visitations to campus. Patty, are you online? Okay.
I don't think she is. She's not showing up.
Okay, I didn't think she was. What phase of reopening are we at in Hendry County? Could you answer that, Mr. McCarthy?
I believe we're still in phase 2. If they're talking about the governor's orders, that would be phase 2 that we're in.
Yeah.
We did not get,
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go through and see if I can find some other things. Folks, you understand that I'm not perfect, so if I skip, I'm not doing that intentionally.
Mr. Paletti, can I say just a few things about our social emotional learning and mental
please.
health? So we are putting into place some various social emotional learning curriculum, online support for that, possibly a universal screening for all of your students who are coming back, either digital or virtually. We have also been approved at the board meeting this week for an additional mental health counselor for the school district. So that allows us to have 4 mental health counselors on site for your students. We are going to utilize those 4 and provide a 1 night a week family counseling night with one of our mental health counselors or more, depending on the need and the services that are needed outside of the school day. So that'll start out as 1 night a week. That is the plan. It can be virtual, or it most likely will be virtual. But it could be arranged in some shape or form as an on-site as well. It will just depend on the need and the desires, I guess, of the families in the district as far as that goes. We will also be putting in several groups and things happening inside the schools as far as that social emotional learning goes. So I just want to make sure that we are, that you know that we are covering all of that as well. As far as we are concerned, as far as I am concerned, you know, the kids have faced a little bit of trauma not being in school. So we are going to address it directly. Your school counselors, your school psychologists, and your school mental health specialists will be there along with the teachers and the staffs of the schools. We will be doing training, and we will be doing some curriculum surrounding all of that for them. Thank you, Mr. Pillay.
Okay, thanks. I do have a comment from a teacher who, I'm not laughing at this teacher, but I'll read what she says. Opening at full capacity may not be prudent at this time. Perhaps a hybrid reopening would be more feasible. I'm not going to say whether I agree or disagree with what the Commissioner of Education has done. I just know that I have to, ours is not to question why, ours is but to do or die. And that's the position I hold, and that's not to put, my responsibility is not to put Hendry County in any potential realm of reprimand or problems. It may be very well said that it's not prudent for us to open at this time. However, the order says that we will open and have a 5-day brick and mortar, meaning traditional school, option open for the students and parents in the state. You see where Broward, Miami-Dade, and Palm Beach have backed off of their openings. We could also, we're in regular communication with the Hendry County Health Department. We have not reached that level where they say it is not safe. Folks, if the Hendry County Health Department tells us it's not safe to open school, we're not opening school. And we will start planning immediately how to start virtual instruction, which would be more bell to bell, what looks like a traditional day. You also need to know that, let me go through, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think and read at the same time, and I know how hard that can be. If the custodians at the schools do not have enough time, county maintenance people will come in and help them with that. We will also, because we have the additional money from the CARES Act, which is the money that came from the state, look at how we might be able to repurpose that to at least temporarily provide additional services, not only custodial, but paras, because supervision will take place. Here's what's happening. Traditionally, we have students who are dropped off early into school, and they're dropped off before anybody sometimes even reports to school. Well, now they cannot go into the school until their temperature is taken. We also have gates. All schools are gated. The gates will not open until the first bus arrives. So those people who drop off their students early need to realize that that is going to change. The school nurses will be in this together. I think I've covered most of the ones I have here. Dr. Egley, do you have anything you would like to say?
Well, everybody's covered it pretty well, but the nice thing about it is that parents, depending on your level of fear or anxiety, have a choice. And Mr. Pletty and his leadership team have done everything they can to try to provide you with viable choices that you can choose from that will make your comfort level improve, because the unknown variables are numerous. And what we're trying to do is figure this out as we go. And we're trying to make the best decision based on guidelines from the health department, CDC, as everyone's already said. But as we get new information, as we get new data, the situation may change. So Mr. Pletty and other people have said it before, we ask for your support, we ask for your patience and your understanding. It's not the same old schoolhouse that we grew up in. Schools used to be one of the most inviting places in town where people wanted to go and be a part of the school and be a part of the educational environment. But that's no longer the case. We've got to protect the organization and those within the schoolhouse. So please be patient. Please practice social distancing and really, really stress that with your kids before school starts, regardless of which pathway you choose. And we hope that the situation will get better, we can all return to normal, but until then, we're going to have to improvise and adjust based on the situations that we're faced with. And thank you for your concern and for your questions, and as we continue to try to open the lines of communication with our public and our parents.
Okay,
That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Egley. Folks, I need you to realize that we realize that this is not perfect, but it's the best that we can do. I've used this analogy before, and I'm going to say it again. This isn't like learning like flying an airplane while you're being taught how to fly the airplane. This is like flying the airplane while the airplane is being built. It's really, I have just crossed my 36th year in Hendry County, in the Hendry County School District, and have never had to deal with anything quite like this. Also, Mr. Adams, are there any additional questions that have come in since we began?
Yes, sir. We do have several additional questions that have been added to our live chat session. Just want to thank everybody for tuning in and watching and participating as well. I will go ahead and get started with those. One of the questions is, will parents have to pay for option 3, virtual school?
No.
And
No.
yes, I figured that'd be important to clarify.
Yes.
Next question is, how will the distance learning students be informed of their schedules and receive necessary paperwork?
Through the school. The school is going to have to build that schedule for that student, and the schools will use whatever options, whether it's a phone call, whether mail will be sort of dicey, but they can also send it to them virtually, since they do have the technology to do that. But the student will have a regular school schedule.
Yes, and I also just want to mention there that we do have the student information system, which is Focus Parent Portal, which does provide parents access to those schedules as well.
Yeah. Now, if a student is, suppose they pick option 2, and then it's just they would rather come back to school, there is no guarantee that they're going to get that same math teacher that they had virtually. The only guarantee I have is that it's going to be a teacher teaching the math, okay? Particularly critical is that we can't have an algebra teacher up there saying, here's your lesson for the day, go do it. We need to have the people there who are going to give the lesson and then teach the lesson, so that during that transition it can be as seamless as possible.
I know that we referred to class size a couple of times, so there was a question about what are those class size limits for VPK primary and secondary classrooms?
VBK primary, okay. We have 18 per class, K1, 2. Then it goes 22 per class for 3 and 4. Then Mr. Seeley, what is it, 23 at 4 at 5 through 8?
25, it's actually 18 for K1, 2, and 3, 22, 4, and 5, and 25, am I correct?
6, okay. Yeah, I knew the high school, and I know that I have to look at that formula every year to make sure that we are as close as possible. So that's what the sizes are.
Which one did I miss, Dr. Staley?
The middle school, but I believe that 4 and 5 in the middle school are 22.
They are. Yeah. 18, 3 down to K, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
And then 25, 9 to 12.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, thank you.
and that's in core subjects only. Okay, it's in core subjects in the high school and in the middle school are the only one, those are the academic subjects that are limited. PE, art, band, things of that nature have no class size restrictions on them.
Thank you.
I just heard from, if I can, I'm sorry, Jason, Pat Sutton just texted me, PPK is 20. VPK is 20.
Okay, thank you.
But, yeah, and remember, VBK is not a K-12 funded program. So it does not follow, unless it's ESE, it does not follow under all of the guidelines that a state FTE supported program falls under.
Okay, next question is, will the bus drivers have temperature checks as well?
Yes, all of our staff members have to have temperature checks in the morning before they get on the bus. So, and self-reporting if they have any other symptoms and drawing out. Just for information, we've already got 2 bus drivers out with COVID. We expect to have more as we go along, but they'll be back online.
Yeah, I get my temperatures taken every morning when I come to work, having to go through the screening. They actually found a pulse yesterday.
And just as a note along that, we're already doing that for summer school, our summer school bus drivers. And from the chemical usage and standpoint, disinfecting, summer school is not guinea pigs. We've had to start implementing all of this security protocol, or PPE protocols for summer school. We're disinfecting those classrooms for those students that are in there now on a daily basis, and the buses in between runs. So we're doing that today, and it's already in place for the summer schools.
Thank you for that clarification. We had several questions about block scheduling. What is block scheduling, and will other secondary schools go to block scheduling as well?
Well, I wouldn't stand in the way of anybody going through block scheduling. Block scheduling is more familiar to those people who have a history at LaBelle High School. Basically, that is 4 80 or 90-minute classes, however they build it, per day, so that by January, those students will have earned 4 credits. If it transitions back, or when it transitions, I'm going to say when, I'm going to be positive. When it transitions back, LaBelle High School then reverts to a 7-period day, so that at the end of the year, the student who has successfully completed all of their requirements of their classes will have earned 7.5 credits. If any school wants to go through that to limit, primarily we're doing it to limit at LaBelle High School, they chose to do it this way so that students are not in the hallways 8 or 9 times during the day. So that's why they're doing it. And there is some argument to the fact that there is depth to instruction if you deal with it longer. It's going to be an adjustment, and it's not a panacea, but it's something that's doable, and if other schools want to do it, they need to call me. Before we go on to the next question, I want to keep people in mind of this, and this was something that I had overlooked. We have a positive COVID case, we are not requiring the people to tell us. That information will come directly to us from the Hendry County Health Department. That's how closely we work. And so that's when the protocols and things will kick in. At the secondary level, depending on where and how and when, those protocols are being developed, and they'll be developed before the beginning of school for how we handle this at the middle and high school level, okay? Parents who choose distance learning will still qualify for a lunch or a breakfast. And it may be delivered the same way that they were delivered during last spring. Okay, that was an important issue that someone brought up, and I needed to bring that up. Okay, Mr. Adams, next question.
You stated that masks would be optional in the classroom, but can teachers require masks to be worn in their classrooms?
I would fight that battle when we fought that battle. You know, why are people wearing masks? Is to prevent their spread of germs, okay? I would not have a problem with teachers requiring masks. If the student has left the mask at home, they need to provide a paper mask for them. I'm talking about primarily at the elementary school level. I just don't, I mean, we've all seen the debate on TV that why are you taking away my freedom when you are requiring me to wear a mask? The issue here is, well, you have freedom not to be at a school because you can make one of these other choices. Therefore, I'd say that, and again, I haven't dealt with this question, so I'm sort of thinking out loud. I would not at this moment have a problem with a teacher requiring a student to wear a mask. I reserve the right to change my opinion based on legal advice and guidance.
Thank you, sir. Will Chromebooks be provided for options 2 and 3? The distance learning and the virtual school?
Yes. Yes.
One question related to the students that arrived on the bus before teachers were present on campus. Is there procedures and protocols for those school systems? I think it's specifically related to the schools in Clewiston.
Well, the procedure would be that we are working on this right now. The principals are giving me their lists of people who they need. We will not have anyone on campus unsupervised. So that when the buses arrive, there are people there, whether we pay them extra, whether we let them go home early or whatever. But those people will be there. We will be able to house the students. That's the one time where we probably can keep something of a social distance by keeping everyone from being in the cafeteria at once. We can have lines outside provided the weather is good. The temperatures can be taken and things of that nature. But there will be people there. We will have an administrator and hopefully other people who will be there to handle the students who are coming in. We do not want, we just talked about the pre-Ks and Ks a little while ago. Those are not children who we need to be unsupervised on a campus.
Thank you. We addressed that if an elementary student or teacher or staff member would have contracted COVID-19, that classroom would be closed. But what if a student at the secondary level was to acquire COVID-19?
That's what we're working on, because it depends on where, how, when, and who all was impacted. So that would probably be the one that, if we have to give, and I hate dealing with what ifs because I'm not saying this is going to happen, but that would probably be where the area would be more susceptible to have a school closure. Okay, because I cannot maintain a cohort at those levels because I don't have, if you have a class of 30 students or 25, I'm not going to arbitrarily move us beyond class size, 25 students, first period, very doubtful any of those students have the same class second period, so that I can't send those students in there. I might be able to pull it off in the 9th grade, but unless I can do it with everybody, it's immaterial on if I have other people who are changing. Then within that 25 group of students, I need to make sure that none of them have an AP class or an honors class or a extra class of an executive internship or things of that nature where they move. So I cannot keep those kids together throughout the day. You understand?
Absolutely.
So it's gonna be, that is problematic, and we're working on it. And we're not gonna develop, folks, I believe in looking at what other districts do and stealing from them. That's what we're gonna be doing, and that's what we're gonna be talking about with the health department.
Do we have any information as far as after-school care, and will that still continue to be provided?
You mean through the federal programs?
I think it's, one question was questioning Country Oaks and the YMCA program.
Well, we have the YMCA program going now. The state had asked us to incrementally begin letting students return. And in the LaBelle area, for some reason, the YMCA is not operating in Clewiston, to my knowledge. They might be now, but they weren't. We have about 15 students who are at the YMCA. And yes, we would allow that to continue to happen on both ends of the campus, but the YMCA has to take charge of some of its own sanitation. If we have the YMCA operating at 2 different elementary schools, and Mr. McCarthy has his protocol where that school is sanitized, and yet we have an after-school program coming in, we're gonna have to re-sanitize. So YMCA is going to have to be responsible. Now, in their summer program, they have scaled back a lot of their activities so that they're not doing field trips or things of that nature. We would, in discussions with them, have to establish their cleaning protocol and their activities.
Would the face shields be an acceptable alternative to masks if purchased by parents and worn by students and teachers?
I would say so. The whole idea is to keep the mouth and nose covered. So whatever way keeps that from moving out, I believe it would be. Dr. Staley, you came right back on. What did you say?
I did, and because we have purchased, or we are purchasing a few different types to try to get a feel for what will work, especially for some of our younger kiddos. And I found that there are some that attach like around the neck at the bottom and go up, that we have ordered to kind of do a trial run for that, especially if it keeps the younger kids' hands off of it and it just becomes something they don't notice. So, yes, those are great options, I think. And we have ordered some as a trial basis. So I would welcome that for any parent.
Okay, good.
Thank you. The students that select to participate in the distance learning, will they be able to continue on with instruction in their elective courses, and would they be able to participate in sports?
Yeah. Now, the issue is, what do sports look like? And we're not totally clear on what sports are going to look like as we go on. Okay,
I just have a couple more. will teachers have a choice to teach traditional or online?
It depends on the health of the teacher. Teachers have a contract. It may be, what if we don't need that many online teachers? Okay, or what if we don't have enough online teachers, am I gonna have to go recruit? So that's the question that I'd rather, it depends on what do the numbers look like. If I have 10 teachers that say I wanna teach remotely and I have a need for 4, am I gonna send the others home and just let them not work? I don't think so. We're gonna have to figure out some way to accommodate that. Our goal, there are teachers there, and I'm not calling them by name, and they are very valuable employees, but they have chronic conditions that their doctors are probably not gonna let them come to a regular setting. Those are gonna be the first priority teachers who will be teaching in a virtual setting. Okay, and I know they're out there. I happen to know them, some of them. I don't know all of them, but I know more than what I know are out there. And that's gonna require a doctor's documentation.
Thank you, sir. The last question that I have is, what will eating in the classroom look like for teachers, and how will that affect teacher lunches?
We are working with HCEA on that. That is a teacher working condition. And teachers by contract have 30 minutes duty-free lunch. And under the original plan that we worked, we had it figured out. Under this plan, we don't have it figured out, but we will figure out something. One school has enough para coverage to provide the 30-minute duty-free lunch for every teacher. Some of them may not. So we're gonna figure that out. We're gonna sit through and figure it out. We're also gonna look at those principals lists who might need us to buy planning periods or areas where we can pay a parent extra to come in. Or can we hire a part-time person? But the issue is sometimes it's not easy to find extra paras or extra custodians. But yeah, we're working on that issue, and I'm in contact with the HCA president regularly, and as a matter of fact, we talked about this and other issues yesterday, and we have a meeting scheduled for next week. But yeah, there are a lot of working conditions impacted by the contract, or that this impacts the contract language.
Okay, thank you. I also just want to announce that we will have a frequently asked question document posted and available on the Hendry County website. That's henry-schools.org. We're in the process of compiling all of these questions and writing out those answers so that they will be accessible to the public. We do have several other questions that appear to me to be a little more specific to the school site and could possibly be better answered by those principals and administrators at the individual schools.
Okay. All right, well then at this time, I'd like to thank everyone who's joined us. I hope this has been helpful, and I hope we can all work together to make this the best possible opening for the 2021 school year that it can be. Again, thank you, and this does not mean I will not take any other questions. Send them to my office, give me a call, email me, or whatever. But thank you again.